This podcast is made possible by Avalara and Ledge.
Hi, this is Anna Chadwick, Executive Vice President and CFO at Pitney Bowes, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 991.
The first one is to shorten our reporting and reforecasting cycles, just to get the books closed a little bit more quickly, update our forecasts more quickly, because again, in a high growth business, your ability to invest is the lifeblood of that growth. So we want to make sure that we're doing that as optimally as possible. And as related to that, improve the reporting that we're doing out to the business units and give them budgets, on a more consistent cadence. And then finally, it's to build some more processes in some of these key areas where we're expanding and add some governance around that as well.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Jeff Bray, CFO of Semperis. Jeff Bray long ago learned the power of focus, a lesson he gleaned early in his career while transitioning from an analyst to a portfolio manager. He recalls a strategic moment when he realized that narrowing his investments to 3 to 5 key stocks greatly amplified his success. This principle of concentrated effort not only transformed Bray's approach to investment management, but would become a guiding principle throughout his career, including his latest chapter as CFO of cybersecurity company Semperis. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co, that's ledge.co, to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. Hello, we're speaking with Jeff Bray, CFO of Semperis. Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Excited to be here today.
So, Jeff, can we ask you to look back for us and try to identify some of those experiences you feel really prepared you for this role as you went along in your career? What comes to mind?
Yeah, sure. I have a fairly non-traditional path into the CFO role and frankly into the finance group overall. I spent the first 25 years of my career in investment management. And most people are familiar with investment banking, but investment management, often called the buy side, is where you have portfolio managers and analysts who are buying and investing in stocks and bonds on behalf of their clients. And that's what I did. I started my career as an analyst and worked my way up to portfolio manager of a stock portfolio, managing mutual funds across a lot of different sectors. And it gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about a lot of different industries, and then a lot about very specific companies as well. Because if you build a position in a stock that's important to your portfolio, you want to know everything you can about that company inside and out. And so not only just the financial model, but also what's going on in the market, who's their competition, what other alternatives are there, from not just a product perspective, but from an investment perspective as well. And so doing that type of research and becoming a long-term partner with a lot of these companies, you learn to think like a finance leader in a lot of different ways.
And I want to just point out the early part of your career, and forgive me for I don't dwell on colleges usually, but you went to Harvard undergrad. I mean, was it going to be finance coming out of Harvard, or were you a history major? Or what was your undergraduate mindset?
So that's an interesting question. I initially started as an applied math and economics major because I saw myself going into business. And at one point late in my sophomore year, I was in a class with a bunch of people who were in the math club the night before. And I decided that really wasn't for me. So applied math was kind of a level of math that I wasn't quite interested in. So I switched to economics so that I could actually diversify what I was studying. And I actually spent a lot of time studying English as well. And so kind of have that bipolar experience of a lot of quantitative work, but also kind of the qualitative and writing side as well.
And you mentioned becoming an investment associate, and that was at Putnam Investments. I noticed something, and I'd like to ask, just because it was your early years, you left Putnam, and then you come back a year later, or a year and a half later, whatever it was, and it looks like you got a promotion and what have you. I guess they might have approached you again and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come back. We've got something more for you." Or was there something more involved there? Yeah, I love indecision in the early years just because I think it's widely experienced and we don't talk about it. Some of our listeners would appreciate knowing that not everyone had everything nailed down from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in a program. So I was in a program at Putnam Investments where the intention was you would do this research work for a few years and then you would go get an MBA. And ideally, you would get the MBA and come back at a higher level. When I was preparing to get my MBA, I was lobbying to say, hey, look, I don't think I need an MBA to become a full-fledged analyst. Why don't you guys keep me? And they said, well, we just don't do that. That's not the way the program works. So I was pursuing my MBA, but while I was having that discussion with some of my partners, my salesperson at Lehman Brothers said, hey, we actually have an opportunity down here in New York. Why don't you come down and work for us? And I thought, you know what? I can try that. It's something unique and different, and it would be a way to expand my career. And if I don't like it and it doesn't work out, I can still go get an MBA. So I left Boston, went down to work on Wall Street for a couple of years, and had an incredible experience. And by the way, I got to work for someone who was somewhat of a legend on Wall Street. There's a book called Liar's Poker, which was Michael Lewis's very first book. And there's a character in that book that he calls the human piranha. And I won't discuss some of the reasons why they call him that because it's not safe for work. But he was a very interesting character and very hard driving, but very successful leader of the team that I was working on. And, he helped me focus on being successful and what it took to be really good at being an analyst. All that being said, had a great experience with almost 2 years on Wall Street. And after I'd been there, I started to realize, you know what, I really don't need an MBA to do the job that I wanted to do. And I think Putnam also realized that as well. And when they had an opportunity that came up, they called me and said, "Hey, we'd like for you to come back as a full-fledged analyst now." So it wound up in the exact same place where I wanted it to go, just not in the direction that I thought it would take.
That a great story for us. I'm glad I asked. See what happened there?
Yeah.
Hey, so tell us about your thinking as you move beyond Putnam. Where are you headed? What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I love the day-to-day work of investment management, getting to meet with CEOs and CFOs and do the research on industries and the excitement of picking stocks. The challenge was the industry just wasn't very good and hasn't been very good for the last 20 years or so. Revenues have been shrinking overall, and a lot of companies were cutting their way to prosperity. And that just wasn't a lot of fun for me. So after the credit crisis, I decided that I wanted to investigate other career paths. And the challenge is, I had what I would most people would consider a set of fairly specialized skills that were around one industry. And it was hard to walk into a company in a different industry and transfer those skills. So the thing that seemed like the most logical extension was investor relations. And at that point in time, we started to see some people move from investment banking and investment management into the investor relations sphere. And I had a couple of friends who had done that. And I followed their careers and looked at, what were some of the challenges that they faced, what were some of the benefits of making the move. And in the aggregate, it sounded like a really natural step in their career progression. And the real benefit was that I would get to work in an industry that I was coming to love, which was software. The challenge was that in investment management, the compensation is very generous and it's very, it was just a very easy role to stay in for a long time as long as they would have you. So in order to make that leap, I had to make the decision to take a substantial cut in my compensation, not only because you just don't get paid as well in your average corporate role, but also because I had to prove myself. So I went from being, a VP at a fairly large global bank to being a director of investor relations at a small publicly traded company, which was all fun and exciting, but it was a big risk, not only on my part, but Imprivata, the company that hired me, it was a little bit of risk on their part as well, because I'd never done it before. But it gave me that foot in the door to the career that I thought I really wanted.
Your communication skill set sounds like you were very confident that you could manage analysts, explain the business at a very specialized level. I mean, am I right?
Yeah. If you think about what the role of an analyst is, it's to take all of this information, quantitative, qualitative, and boil it down to an investment recommendation. And so you can't write a 40-page report and expect your portfolio managers to read and understand everything in that. You've got to be able to boil it down to 3 to 5 bullet points with some numbers behind it to tell a story of, the stock's at 40, I think it's going to 80, and here's why. And so, after 25 years of going through that process over and over again, yeah, I felt like I had refined those skills. And not only that, the pitch that I made to Imprivata was I understood and spoke the language of the people that they were trying to sell their stock to. And while CEOs are obviously great at selling the story of their company, or else they wouldn't be CEOs and the companies wouldn't be successful, speaking to customers is a very different thing than speaking to investors. And being able to boil that story down into a few bullet points that are highly impactful is a skill that I had honed over that time.
So, and I'll point out, I mean, you did mention you took those English classes way back when as well. So there was some interest there
Right.
in language and communication, one would guess. So please continue on. I mean, is investor relations, is that something you're going to stick with for a while, or what happens?
No, investor relations was really my foot in the door. And I looked at it from two vantage points. One was I didn't really know what it was like, working in a quote unquote real company. So I wanted to take advantage of that position to learn as much as possible about what the different potential routes for me could be. The second thing was I've always enjoyed being in companies that were growing and industries that were growing. And so when I got to Imprivata, they were growing 25% a year. And the math is if you grow 25% a year for 3 years, you double in size. And so the way I looked at it was if the company doubled in size in 3 years, I should be doing something different. Maybe the investor relations role is bigger, but maybe I'm doing something even bigger than investor relations. And so I didn't really know which direction it was going to take me in, but I thought I would get some opportunities to grow and expand.
And when you do change roles, you jump into another investor relations role, but within a company that opens more doors for you. How am I doing?
Yeah, so Rapid7 was a little bit bigger when I got there, around 150 million in revenue and growing a little bit faster. So there was definitely a little bit more opportunity. There was a lot of work to do on the investor relations side, but shortly after I got there, I inherited the business intelligence team. And that was really good fortune on my side because it amped up my ability to dig in and understand what was going on in the company. The business intelligence team handled all of the business metrics of the company: revenue, ARR, customers, renewal rates, everything at a very granular level. And so in order to report that out, we had to understand how the business was working, how we wanted to measure those things, and the data. And was that data valuable? Was it high quality? And could we connect it to other aspects of the business? And that was just an incredible opportunity for me. I had a great team, and we worked at a company that had a thirst for that level of data. And over time, we went from just reporting things like what's customer growth and what's retention to connecting that to what our customers were doing and what industries they were in, and allowing us to understand how the customers were using the product and which sectors were heavier users of our product or more likely to renew. So that was an incredible experience.
And you do really take on more FP&A responsibilities, or it becomes a bigger part of your world, and you advance into more senior roles, I think, in FP&A. Can you tell us about what's that like? I mean, is that you already had plenty of perhaps FP&A high calorie projects along the way, but was this more of a validation of who you are as a finance executive?
Yeah, at that point, I had figured out where I had the most interest and where I could add the most value. And FP&A is such a strategic role within the organization. And it was a natural progression from what I'd been doing. So again, not only from my work on the business intelligence side, but in investor relations, I got to learn every aspect of the business in a very in-depth way. And so one of the great things about doing investor relations at a public company is everyone in the company wants to talk to you because they want to know, is the stock going up? How much is it going up? Why is it going up? And so when you knock on someone's door, hey, Mr. VP of product, I'd love to sit down and learn more about your team. They usher you right in, and you're allowed to have those great in-depth conversations about not just what the executive leadership wants, but how are things operating on the ground. And it was critical for me to understand that because I was out on the front lines representing the company. And the better I understood the story, the more confident I could be in telling it. So when the FP&A leadership opportunity came up, I felt like I was, incredibly positioned to do it. Now, it's a different job. There's a level of granularity that you have to run at with FP&A that I was not familiar with. But luckily, I had an incredible team, and they were great at it. But I knew how to ask the right questions and what questions to ask to make sure that we had highly accurate forecasts. And so that allowed me to help the business invest for growth as much as possible, and as well expand, my influence beyond just traditional FP&A.
Yeah, and I think the Rapid 7 experience where you were there a little over 5 years is so important because you come out the other end and you step into a CFO role. So again, you got the opportunities to grow into that larger FP&A, more senior role. You came in as a investor relations person. Someone, I guess, you talked about the breadth of people who came to you. So I mean, from the day you arrived, you were sort of speaking to the senior leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We within the first year of my arrival, we put on a public analyst day. So, we had a 4-hour presentation about where the company was and where it was going. And in order to do that well, you've got to have a really, really tight strategic story that you're telling investors, and spent a lot of time with the CEO, the COO, product, everyone, making sure that we had a strategic story that not only made sense from where we were, but again, made sense in the context of the broader market. Because, as a public company, you're competing with other companies for investment capital. So you can't just be talking about what you're doing. It has to make sense in the broader market context.
Is it clear to you at this place in time, one would imagine it is, that you're thinking, I'll become a CFO? Are you mapping out a time frame? Are you saying, okay, 7 years? I'd like to be here. I don't know how your mind works or how disciplined you might be in terms of that. Most finance leaders are, though. It might be a fair question. Do you have it in your sights? Or you?
Yeah, probably for the first time in my career, I really settled in on a career path once I stepped into the FP&A role. And then it became clear that that was a possibility, and that for me personally, but I was also on the right path to be able to step into that role.
Were you having conversations with recruiters, and are they trying to convince you, okay, you're ready, and are you pushing back, or what is the give and take there? Or maybe it's the other way around.
So I'm starting to hear from recruiters, but really what I was hearing was from my mentor. So I worked for the same CFO at Imprivata and Rapid 7, and he has been my mentor and continues to be my mentor through that. And he's got, what we call a great CFO tree. There's a bunch of CFOs across the US who have worked for Jeff through the years. And, he was one of these great leaders who basically said, look, if I'm doing a great job, I'm putting myself out of a job. I want all the people who work for me to step up and do more and do more. And he identified that I had, the potential to become a CFO, and he really helped groom me for that
Great.
role.
Great. Well, nice overview for us. And I think we'll probably have a few more career-related questions for you a little later. But right now, let's find out about Semperis. Tell us about this company. What does it do, and what are its offerings today?
Yeah, so Semperis is about a 10-year-old company that was founded in Israel and moved its headquarters to Hoboken after that. But we are a cybersecurity software company that provides solutions that help secure your identity infrastructure. It's a great space, and we have great products. And as a result, for the last 4 years, we've been on the Deloitte Fast 500 of fastest growing technology companies. And the reason is that we're solving a really, really tough problem for enterprises around the world. And what is that problem? Your identity infrastructure is the nervous system of a company. It allows you to log onto your laptop, to get onto your network. It connects to all the devices that are part of your company's network, and even your applications are part of your identity infrastructure. So it's truly the crown jewels of every enterprise. And so as a result, it's a high value target for the hackers out there. And what Semperis does is provide solutions that help optimize your identity infrastructure. We provide backups to this infrastructure, and we provide fast, secure recovery if you've been breached or if something else goes wrong in your infrastructure. And so the most common identity system in enterprises is Microsoft Active Directory. And that's what we focus on, is optimizing, backing up, and recovering Microsoft Active Directory, along with some of the other identity systems that are out there.
So could you provide us with an abbreviated history of its capital structure?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we raised our Series C round, and a couple of years before that, a Series B. The Series B investor was Insight, and Series C was KKR, both very well-known enterprise security software investors. And so as a result, we've raised, over $200 million in equity capital over our lifetime.
Let's see, you arrived just a few months back, but maybe you can just share with us, what is this chapter that you're opening then for this company? What is it that you're taking on?
Yeah, so we've had extraordinary growth, basically since the pandemic. There were several years of triple-digit growth, and we're still having hyper growth today. And as a result, we've went from a company where, 2 years ago, we had a couple of people on the finance team, and now we've got about 10. And we are at the point where we need to build more process and infrastructure in order to be able to continue to scale the business. And so, given that I've operated finance teams at a number of different companies over $100 million in revenue, I understand what those requirements are. And so I've been brought in to help scale the company from a process and systems perspective and put the governance in that you need, to become, a much larger company.
As you arrive and you take a look at the numbers and the benchmarking with others in the space, what is it that you want to measure more effectively? What is it that you're not content to have last week's data? I don't know what it might be. What is it that you're looking to step up and educate the organization more about? Anything?
Well, there's really two areas, Jack. The first one, which is very common, is sales productivity. Again, we're a high growth company. And so most of what we're spending is going into our sales and growth effort. And it's been very productive. We've generated a lot of growth, but as we scale up and that growth number gets bigger every year, we need to make sure that we're investing in the right places and at the right scale. So that's, not unique to us, but it is an area that I've spent a lot of time focusing on. The other key area is pricing and what I'll call pricing integrity. And so we've got a number of different products, but what we haven't had historically is a lot of consistency in how we price different customers. And so part of that is because we just don't have the visibility on it. So we can't necessarily compare customer A to customer B and, why did this customer get this discount and this one got twice that discount? And one of the reasons we also want to look at that is we're getting ready to launch a bunch of new products this year. So it's going to be even more critical to understand how to price those new products against what we have in the marketplace as well.
And is that visibility being achieved through new sources of data or more real-time data, or what would it be?
Yeah, so today, I think we have all the data there. We just don't have it in a place that's consumable. So I think the first thing is to just get it all in one place, get it in a format that makes sense to be able to compare, our ADFR product against our DSP product, against the bundle, and then against the different customers of various sizes. But what we really want to be able to do is to set the benchmarks for, this is a reasonable discount. This is where the market is today. Yeah, like that customer in 2021 or 2020 might have gotten this deal, but it might have been our first customer in European banking. So we may have given them a deal that no one else is getting. And so today we're going to have a different standard. So we want to, be able to stay as current as possible on what, street price is for our product on a day-to-day basis.
So we're wondering if you were looking to organize finance a little differently. Is there something that you've added or you want to maybe subtract? We don't have to do this anymore. Why are we doing it? Anything you can.
So my team is a little undersized for what we're trying to achieve, certainly this year and beyond. I think structurally it's set up roughly right. What we need is just some more resources, and not just on my team, but some of our partner business units and operations and so forth. So we're focused on identifying what are the priorities that we need to, things that we're not doing today that we need to be doing. But we are asking that question of, are there things that we're doing today that we don't need to be doing? Is this someone else's responsibility, or is it actually just not a high value operation that we're doing? And that is something that I'm in the middle of discussions with my team right now.
Just curious, you explained well for us, just involved with the data that can help you create that greater visibility. But all of what has to happen there isn't just your team.
Mm-hmm.
One would imagine it's a lot of collaboration coming together and everyone understanding that this is a priority, or, here's why we need you to dedicate more time to this.
Yeah, absolutely. The number of systems that affect the data that we're looking at, most of them are not in finance, right? So we're, the great news is that we have a very collaborative environment here already. So it's not like I'm coming in and introducing my team to the business intelligence team or the operations team. They've been working very closely all along. I think the challenge is just setting the priority of, this is what's important to understand today, relative to all the other projects that we're trying to execute on, and where does it land on that list? And sometimes our projects land at the top of the list. It's easy when you're the CFO putting that request in. Sometimes you can move it up, but sometimes they don't. And we need to understand that other aspects of the business might take priority, but the other good news is that we control the budget. So if somebody wants to invest in a new system, we're deeply involved in that conversation.
I want to touch on AI with you and understand if it's, part of your day to day. And I'm sure there have been lots of conversations about how to leverage it or how to bring it into integrate it into the operations for, different reasons. But can you share with us what, when it comes to AI, what are the things that you're paying attention to, or what's top of mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm always interested in new technology, having been in the technology sector for over 30 years. And I'm always interested in things that can make our teams more productive. And so I'm listening carefully to everyone talking about AI to see where we can move the needle on those things. In the finance team, haven't found a lot of applications for it yet. We've attempted maybe to use it to help write some SQL code, to do some of that data analytics. But again, just probably more just testing as opposed to operationalizing at this point. We are looking at things like Copilot, and are there ways we can leverage that to help us be more productive? But it's really in the early days at this point. The one area where it's been very useful for me personally is because I'm paying attention to what's going on in the broader market. Taking a conference call transcript from a earnings call of one of our peers and asking one of the AI services to summarize that and say, hey, we're in the identity space. Can you tell me if this company mentioned identity on their conference call? That's been very useful for me, but it's kind of a niche use case at this point.
That's a great example for us, and I think a lot of finance leaders and their teams are experimenting like that. So that's a great area. And investor relations and communications, it's gonna be interesting to see how certain documents are influenced by AI templated responses and what have you, I guess. But we'd love to ask you for a finance strategic moment. Again, that's sometime during the course of your career, you had a moment of insight that led you to maybe a new opportunity or avoiding a risk. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my investment management career. And when I moved up from being an analyst to a portfolio manager, and I took over a portfolio where, I had a goal to beat a benchmark. And one of the great things about being in investment management is the data and analytics is very mature, and you can identify risks very easily, both positive and negative risks. And so when I took over the portfolio and I was looking at where our risk generation was from a stock level perspective, I noticed that it was very dispersed. It wasn't targeted in a specific set of stocks. And then I looked at what our analysts were doing and how they were spending their time. And, they were looking at maybe like, hey, these are my 20 best ideas from a stock perspective. And then when I thought about how I was going to build a portfolio and how do I take 20 ideas from 4 different people and build a portfolio that's going to benefit from those ideas, it became obvious very quickly that I couldn't because it was just too dispersed. And so what I did was I said, on top of that, your 20th idea is probably not that different from your 10th best idea, may not even be that different from your 7th best idea. So why don't we take your 3 to 5 best ideas, you focus all your time and energy in getting those stocks right. And if you're right, I will put that in the portfolio and put all of our risk in the portfolio in those 3 to 5 ideas from each of the analysts. And so if they're right, then our portfolio will outperform. And so the lesson there was you can't be great at a lot of different things. You probably can't even be good at 20 or 25 different things. So let's find the 3 to 5 things that we want to be great at. Let's invest most of our resources behind that. And then the other stuff, yeah, we'll do, but the 80-20 rule is going to apply here. And I've tried to use that, as I've moved beyond investment management throughout my career.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
We're going to jump to our mentoring round where I'll ask you several quick questions. We're going to ask you to look back again. And what we're interested in is that first 60 days in the CFO role. So this is just after you left Rapid7. Again, you've had 2 CFO. This is your second CFO tour of duty. So we're talking about the one before. But when you first stepped into the role, there must have been something you wish, I wish I knew this, or I wish someone had told me this. If you can go back in time today, what is it that you would tell that person?
Yeah, the thing that I would say to myself is pay very close attention to things that have changed over the last 6 to 12 months. Because you walk in and you have a set of models that are telling you this is what the business did and here's what we think it's going to do. And you have people talking about the processes that they're doing today. But if you don't understand what the business looked like when it was performing at one level in the past, and if you have a new head of marketing or you have a new CRO, what are they doing differently than what was being done before? And so those are the areas probably where you want to spend the most time, because you want to make sure that the assumptions that you have about what the business was doing 12 to 18 months ago are still true.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. We're wondering if there's something that you do, something that sets you apart, something maybe your colleagues don't know about you. Anything?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The first is that for fun, I play ice hockey in pickup games. It's a great outlet and a great way to get exercise. Not everybody knows that about me because I do it often late at night. The second thing that a lot of people don't know is that I'm on the board of an organization called Old North Illuminated. And living in the Boston area for the last almost 40 years, I've become a little bit of a revolutionary era history nerd. And Old North Illuminated is the organization that maintains the Old North Church and all of the programs that they run around the Freedom Trail and so forth. And it's a very exciting organization to be a part of, especially as we come up on the 250th anniversary of a lot of very significant events in America's history.
Yeah, amazing. I want to follow up here, but I have to ask you for a book recommendation. It could be Liar's Poker.
Love that book, but I've got two other ones. The first one is a book about my favorite revolutionary actor, George Washington, a book called The Indispensable Man by James Thomas Flexner. It's just got a lot of not only great history in it, but a lot of leadership lessons as well. And the other book that was recommended to me as I was trying to build my career as a leader and a manager is a book by Aaron Ain, who was the CEO of Kronos here in Massachusetts for a long time, and very successful. But he has a book called Work Inspired: How to Build an Organization Where Everyone Loves to Work. And as opposed to being a leadership book, it's really a management book, and like, what are the ways to be a really effective manager of your team?
Wow, great selections for us. Can I ask you about the Michael Lewis book? Had you read it before you stepped into Lehman, or had you were aware of the character you were working beside? Or
Yes, I was. I had read that book early in my career.
What was his take on the book?
The human piranha is not the kind of person who worries that much about what the outside world is saying.
Aha.
So
It fits.
yeah.
Makes sense. I would love to have you just end by looking forward for us the next 12 months. And what we'd like to know is your CFO priorities for that period. What would those be?
Yeah, there's a few things that I'm focused on this year. The first one is to shorten our reporting and reforecasting cycles, just to get the books closed a little bit more quickly, update our forecasts more quickly, because again, in a high growth business, your ability to invest is the lifeblood of that growth. So we want to make sure that we're doing that as optimally as possible. And as related to that, improve the reporting that we're doing out to the business units and give them budgets, on a more consistent cadence. And then finally, it's to build some more processes in some of these key areas where we're expanding and add some governance around that as well.
Jeff Bray, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. Enjoyed speaking with you today.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOthoughtleader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.